Hello, I'm Bruce Lorincz, and this show is called Bruce on the Loose. I talk to people in city government, the school system, and businesses in the Wadsworth area. We're so pleased to have Representative Sharon Ray today with us. And Sharon, thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedule to join us today. I'm so excited.
Well, I am very excited to be here as well on the famous Bruce on the Loose show. I mean, now I've made it.
Well, I'll tell you what prompted you as a young girl to think about getting into politics?
Well, it would be a lie if I told you I had any interest when I was younger. This is not something that was ever on my radar. Mm-hmm. We talked a little bit about probably my interest in government was spurred by my high school government teacher, the famous Joe Gaines. Mm-hmm. And I took government in summer school. I went to summer school every year when I was in high school. And he had us, as part of our day every day, to watch the Today Show and then talk about the topics that were discussed on the Today Show. And I really enjoyed that. I thought that was very interesting to me, but still never saw myself participating in any way. And back then it was somewhat unusual for women to participate in politics. But it did spur my interest in current events.
You've had a lot of different positions that have positioned you for state government. You were in the judicial branch with Wadsworth Court. You were executive as a county commissioner, and you were a Wadsworth City Council person. So it's kind of unique to see someone in all three branches of government. How did those various positions prepare you for your current role?
Well, I joke frequently and I say, I think I've been preparing my entire life for the legislature unknowingly. But you're exactly right. Being participative in all three branches of government has given me an insight that I think is somewhat unique as far as how the three pillars work together and also how they are also separate. So you're exactly right. The legislative experience on Wadsworth City Council, which is also statutory like our state government, county commissioner is the executive and a bailiff in the judicial. And also I was on the Board of Elections. That gave me a fascinating perspective of elections. And I'm going to put a little plug in if you don't mind. If you ever want to see how elections work, make sure you volunteer at least one time to be a poll worker. Being a precinct election official is an excellent opportunity to see how the election process works and gives you a good idea of how checks and balances are used throughout the process. Between that and jury duty, I wish they would make both mandatory at least once in your lifetime so you could see both the processes play out.
And it's a paid position. It's not free, right?
It is, well, it's more of a stipend.
That's true. That's true.
There is some compensation for that. But I would encourage anyone who has any interest to call the Medina County Board of Elections. It's really a great thing to do.
And from a government teacher perspective, I would really certainly push and prod and make sure the students, and I registered hundreds of students when I was at Black River, a smaller district than Wadsworth certainly, but it's really important for students to get active right away and think that their vote counts.
Well, Bruce, you're exactly correct, and I think sometimes because of the political temperament right now, people's inclination is to flee away from it, when really we should have more people flocking towards it, because I think there is a very quiet majority out there that, they're not loud on social media, they're not loud in person, but we need to hear their voices too, so they need to make sure they're not staying totally away from it. And quite honestly, I know people say, well, I don't think my vote counts. Well, it absolutely does, and we had a famous example here in the city of Wadsworth where a very long-term former councilman in his first race, the night of election, it showed that I think he was down by 4 or 5 votes, and because ballots are still coming in that were mailed, there was a recount, and he ended up winning by 1. So 1 vote can make a difference.
No, there's no question about it. What about any people in your past political career that were role models or mentors to you?
Well, there's 2 that come to mind right away, and the first, of course, would be Sterling Sechrist from the city of Wadsworth. Sterling, of course, a former Wadsworth councilman and county commissioner who very much cultivated my interest in politics. And then perhaps the man I consider most my mentor is Bill Batchelder, who's a former Speaker of the Ohio House. He absolutely loved the Ohio House of Representatives. very committed to the process and very committed to the institution. And I grew up hearing many, many stories from him about different things that were going on down at the State House. And while I was paying attention, I never saw the relevancy to me, since I didn't ever anticipate a time I would be able to be gone 3 or 4 days a week down to Columbus. But God had other plans, and it worked out. And when my predecessor, Steve Hambley, who I also served with as a commissioner for 8 years, said, I'm not going to run again. If you ever think you're going to run, now's the time. And let's face it, Bruce, I'm not getting any younger. And then I got on the ballot, and the voters were very kind. And I very much enjoyed my time down there. It's been both the best and worst job I've ever had. So.
We talked for a moment before the show about women in politics. 30, 40 years ago, maybe a few sprinkled here and there, but women have really increased their role considerably on all levels of government. Why is that the case?
Well, I think just because a lot of barriers have been broken down, I don't think it is near as foreign an occupation as it used to be. And I have to be honest with you, when I first ran for Wadsworth City Council, I was a divorced single mother, 29 years old. I had not really intended to run. I was kind of a last-minute placeholder kind of a thing, and I don't think anyone was more surprised than me that night when I won election, but more importantly, I became part of a group of women that were just giants in Wadsworth history. Annette Palisak, Gwen Rivers, Loa Gerberg. Those women kind of took me under their wing and were so helpful and so kind and so mentoring. If I'd had a bad experience, I probably never would have done it again. But I think women are a little less competitive and a little bit more supportive of other females coming in, because women are dealing with a lot of issues that I don't think sometimes are at the top of men's radar screens. We talk about the child care crisis in the state of Ohio and in the country, of how child care costs have gone up so significantly. And while I certainly think it's important to fathers, I think it's very important to mothers as well. And not only the cost, but also the quality of the child care. So there's a lot of family issues that I think now, and as we age as a population, I think those are issues that women can add a great deal to. So I'm always excited to see more women. I'm always very excited to see more young people too. And if you're a young person watching this and you have any desire to think that, you know what, maybe I should get involved, do it. Do it. You'll never regret it. You may not ever want to be an office holder, but just being part of the system, I think, really connects you and grounds you as to what's going on in your community. And I think it's invaluable.
You have stepped up and been in leadership position in Ohio as assistant floor whip. Can you describe what that may entail in a daily situation? Well,
I have to tell you, I took a non-traditional path to leadership. Typically, when there is a vote for speaker, the newly elected speaker takes folks that were close to him. I actually voted for the guy that did not win as speaker. And was actually shocked when the gentleman who was elected speaker reached out to me and said, hey, we'd really like you to be part of the team. And I think part of it goes back to just what we discussed earlier, my experience, because I'm a little bit more seasoned and have experience in all three branches of government. And we do have a lot of new people in state government. We have folks that have never been elected to anything. We have some folks that have very limited private or public sector experience, and government can be very confusing. So I was thrilled to be asked. A lot of what I do as far as leadership is making sure people are aware of the issues that are coming up front to them. We do all the whipping of the bills, which means reaching out to folks, seeing where they are in the issues, seeing if they need any additional information. I always tell people, vote your district. That's what you're there for. First and foremost is to vote your district. And if you're on the other side of a vote, you are there to be true to your district. But it's kind of interesting to see what people are familiar with and what they're not familiar with, and also to make sure that they're progressing as a legislator as far as, making sure they're going to their committee meetings and making sure they're aware of all the resources that are out there to help them make decisions on various legislation. So I very much enjoyed it. We have a wide scope of personalities and characters down there, and I've enjoyed meeting every single one of them.
So you're a quasi-teacher too. You're helping the young people first, although they've had various experiences in their lives and in their professions. But again, there's a lot to learn in politics, and you have certainly helped a lot of people.
Well, I like to think I have. That certainly is the intent. I want all of my fellow legislators to do well. I want them to succeed. As many of you know, I will not be running for statewide office or anything like that. So I think that puts me in a little bit of a unique position. I'm not competition for anybody. I just want everyone to do well and do right by their district.
Can you explain House Bill 277 and what it will do?
House Bill 277 is a tax credit for landlords that are pet friendly, that do not charge additional monies for pets and do not exclude specific pets. This was an issue that was brought to me actually by one of our friends on the other side of the aisle that lives up in Cleveland, where the home ownership rate has plummeted. And so for a lot of those folks that are looking to rent, it precludes them from having a pet. Now, some of your rentals, they charge an additional $100 or $200 a month and you can have a pet. But for a lot of people, that is out of reach financially. So this credit is kind of a niche to some of our smaller landlords that may have a duplex or two. It's a maximum of $500 a unit, $2,500 a year. But just to kind of get them over the hump to say, well, I'm going to let Maggie bring her cat with her. We do see a lot of older folks that really would like to perhaps leave their homes and go to a rental because they're getting older and they're having a hard time keeping up with their house, but they're not going to leave their pet. We are so attached to our pets these days, and we're hoping that this will help those folks, the landlords and the folks, get into housing units that are more appropriate for their age and their qualifications.
It's really important for senior citizens to have some support. Meals on Wheels is very popular here in Wadsworth, but having a dog just for protection. The bark, you don't know how big the dog is. It could be a small dog, and we become very attached, and they are almost family.
Oh, they are family, and the companionship benefits of a pet have been proven in study after study of how that helps with avoid depression, it helps with socialization. There's a lot of benefits for having a pet, and I think you've seen pet ownership skyrocket. Not only that, you've seen people spend so much resources on pets that perhaps 50 years ago wouldn't have been a consideration, but certainly now pet insurance has become a hot topic down at the State House as that market expands and grows.
What started your interest in mental health? And I know it is with the pandemic, it has really come to the forefront of not only schools but also our wider community.
Well, I think a lot of time I spent at the court, we saw an awful lot of folks that had some mental health issues. Sometimes there's resources available. Sometimes they don't even know they need resources. But we found it was so effective for reaching out and getting people the help they need to keep them out of the jails. It was another consideration when I was a county commissioner. So often at the jail, you find a lot of folks there with addiction and mental health issues, and sometimes both. And you got to treat them both in order to get somebody back on the correct path so that they can change their life and lead a better life without involvement from the criminal justice system.
No question. What about your term? A 2-year term. It seems to me that you just get to know the workings of the government, and then you're up for re-election. I know the founding fathers and pass it on to the states really wanted a body that was accountable to the people. Is that fair to just get into the job and then you're running for re-election?
Well, it's very problematic, Bruce, because especially for some of our folks that are new to the process, by the time they figure out what's going on, it's time to run for re-election again. And it's a very speedy process, and again, I think that was part of the reason it made it easier for me to say yes. And even I was hesitant. With all the experience I had in government in the different branches, I went down off and on for I think a year ahead of time, just kind of looking around, making sure that I was going to be able to participate productively. But once you go down there, you start on that operating budget for 2 years, and that's fast and furious. Then also, when you introduce a new piece of legislation, there's a very lengthy process it goes through before it could possibly become a law. Think the old schoolhouse rock, and I'm just a bill on Capitol Hill. It's kind of a good little primer for that when you go through a lot of different committee hearings. But anyway, if it doesn't get all the way through the process in the 2 years that you're elected for the GA, at midnight on that last session day, that legislation dies. And in order for it to move forward, somebody would have to reintroduce it. It has to go all the way through the process. So, it's a very fast-paced environment. And the fact that for half your term, you're campaigning for the next term is really tough. And I do wish there were 4-year terms, because I think it would be a lot easier of a process. But the wisdom of our forefathers, I'm not going to question at this point.
Certainly you're into a lot of different topics and everything else. What about the situation where you try to get your constituents involved? What ways do you try to get them informed what you're up to?
Well, we certainly have a very active Facebook page, and we do have a newsletter that goes out periodically. I try to get out and about to a lot of different events. Strictly by virtue of being around for a lot of years in the district at various levels. A lot of folks have my cell phone number, which is very good because they can get immediately in contact with me if there's something coming up that's an emergency or some legislation that they've seen that they have some real concerns about. They can reach out to me direct. We try to do as good a job of that as we can. I'll tell you a confusing thing, though, kind of a funny story, is I had somebody I know said, I sent you an email and you never responded. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel awful. And sometimes things do slip through the cracks. So we finally figured out our district numbers changed. Originally I was 69, now I'm 66. If you send it to Rep 69, it goes into the Neverlands, never to be seen again. So I think that's a challenge, and I think people are like, wow, she never answered me. Well, sometimes there's technological issues outside of our control that do interfere. But I think for the most part, I'm pretty accessible to people if they need to get a hold of me.
And senior citizens, as a group, it was thought years ago that they were just kind of there and not participating, but that has really changed in the last decade, hasn't it?
Well, I think it really has, and as the graying of America happens because of the baby boomers aging, I think they're going to be the most important voting bloc. And so that, there's a lot of senior issues, and of course, as a member of that group, I can see some of the concerns are some of my personal concerns. So it's kind of interesting how this is going to go. I mean, everybody wants to age in place. I think that's going to be a priority. Certainly financially, it's much better for everyone, and also from a mental health standpoint. People like to stay in their house as long as they can. But support's out there for various health issues like Alzheimer's and dementia. I think these issues are going to continue to be big issues as we move forward as a state and a country.
I know you've really kept in touch so much with the Medina and the Wadsworth areas. What has been your role with the Brickyard project? A very exciting park where people maybe not this week with 90s, but generally getting people out and walking and pickleballing and playing softball and all sorts of things.
Well, I think that's one of the things as we age, we want to make sure we do is stay active. And as a regular, I can't say enough wonderful things about the senior center and the Y here in Wadsworth. They have 24-hour access now. I love that. Whoever thought to bring that to Wadsworth, 2 thumbs up. I have friends that we meet at odd, bizarre hours. To just walk and talk. It becomes a very social activity as well. But also we're trying to stay in shape so that we can enjoy our senior years. You've worked all your life. You want to make sure you're able to get up and really enjoy the fruits of your labor. So that's, one of the things that we really like to encourage. And pickleball, oh my gosh, what a phenomenon. Do you play?
I do not.
Have you ever had, I actually have bought the rackets.
Okay.
I have not taken the lessons yet. I think I need lessons.
Right.
But I will tell you, I came and walked to Christmas Day early, and there's people playing pickleball. They were up there getting a game or two in before they went to enjoy their Christmas feasting, and I thought, hats off to you. Hats off to you. But it's a very vibrant community. I think there's even a pickleball channel now for aficionados that want to watch and follow the game. And I love seeing those things come up and become more and more important in people's lives, because it means they're getting active, they're staying connected, and that is just so important as we age.
Yeah, there's a group in Wadsworth, over 900 people are involved in this group. So yes, outside activity. And you're very cognizant of the environment. And I saw an article a couple of years ago in the Medina Gazette where 300 acres every year are taken out of farm production in Medina County. Does that concern you a little bit?
Well, I have a piece of legislation to allow community solar. It's House Bill 197. It's been a very difficult piece of legislation. It was worked on in a previous GA by other reps. We've taken up the mantle. The reason community solar is so important, and we have it in Wadsworth. Wadsworth is an AMP Ohio community. Okay, so we're not dictated by the electric distribution units. We have two of them, and they're wonderful because community solar allows you to take some of the pressure off the grid when it most needs to be released, which is hot days like today. So we're trying to get this through to allow other small solar fields all over the state. We have a pilot program, but in doing research for that legislation, my House Bill 197, totally built out, would take out 3,000 acres of farmland. As of 2023, we have over 10 million acres of farmland in the state of Ohio. So we really do still have quite a bit of farmland in the state of Ohio. But I think, as we talk about the housing crisis, that's where the farmland is going, is for development. And, with Intel coming in and some of these other projects that are coming in, there's nowhere for people to live. So that continues to be a real interesting problem that the state is working on in various capacities.
I know you have a very keen interest in young people with a grandson, and your son I had some dealings with. Why is it that they are reluctant? Students are kind of reluctant to get involved in politics, where they could go ahead and the policies they make today could impact them for years and decades.
Well, I think that unfortunately politics has gotten such a bad name. Like anything, you have a few bad apples, and that tends to draw people's perception of the entire system down, which is really unfortunate. But the other thing is politics has become so nasty. It used to be that, and I still say this, when you're running for office, your job is to talk about you, your ideas, your thoughts, your dreams, even your cat. It's not to talk about the other person. You're either going to make your case and sell yourself to the voters, or you're not. But unfortunately, we've come into this time period, which I hope passed, where it's all about attack, attack, attack. And I think that turns people off. It certainly turns people in my age bracket off, I think. Among my friends, we've talked about it extensively, but it makes it a barrier that people have to get past. But I'm hoping that we pass this time period. And I will say, I've never seen so much division among the parties, which is so sad. And I've had people say to me, well, I'm not going to work with those people. And it's like, well, those people are your fellow Americans, so you better think about that. We're all in this together. And I hope it doesn't take something tragic to bring us all together to realize how much we need to rely on each other to build our communities, to build our state, and to build our country.
And there's a lot of common ground. The parties
absolutely.
could look at things and, could deviate a little bit one way or the other, but there's so much common ground that people need to work together and collaborate.
Oh, and a lot of my stuff is policy stuff, so it's bipartisan in nature, because there are things that are working to make the state better for all of us. And I very much enjoy that. And, it's people are fascinating, but you got to give them a chance and find out where their perspective is from. Because frequently somebody will mention something and I'll say, hey, I didn't know anything about that. Ohio is such a diverse state. That the rural areas, the suburban areas, the urban areas, things are very different all over. And we just need to accept and appreciate our differences as well as our commonalities.
Looking for the future, what piece of legislation would you like to see passed?
Well, my number one legislation I've been working on all year is the Adoption Modernization Act. And I don't know if you know this, Bruce, but I'm an adopted child, and I've been working on this for a while. It has passed the House unanimously. I love to say that.
Sure,
So it
great.
is over in the Senate, and fingers crossed, I think we're going to be able to get it through by the end of the year. That'll make the adoption process not only easier, but less costly.
That is a barrier. The cost is a
Yes.
barrier for people to go forward, isn't it?
It certainly is, and I think people don't realize, the average cost is about $20,000 in legal fees and all the processing fees. So we are taking some steps to make that an easier process, and hopefully we can help some of these kids find good homes.
Looks like you're halfway home. If it's through the House and the Senate, some of your colleagues across the aisle and across the other body can vote for it. We may have it. In like Flint.
I am hoping it gets through the Senate in the next few months, and then back to the House for concurrence, and then on to the governor's desk.
Sharon Ray, I've learned a great deal today about the politics in Ohio and how we need to be active and get involved. And recently we did a show on Firestone Stadium. The state had the softball tournament there, and Joanna Perino went and sent a clip of the show we did to the 16 teams that qualified for the state tournament. WCTV reaches out to not only Wadsworth, but other communities as well. Thanks for viewing.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.